The Kundalini has flowing through it energy, or light we'll call it, that when it touches the three lower chakras, well, you might say excites them, especially the two lower chakras. And that force in the astral body and the mental body will, unless it is highly controlled, incite impure thoughts, impure desires, impure actions. Therefore, it is important when we do our meditative work to see that the Kundalini is cleared. You just ask for clearance so that the superphysical forces, that would be the soul, the Adonai, which is the Shekinah body of light, the seat of spiritual will, and the God Spirit, so that its light will come through and balance the lower bodies. If you remember to always give importance to the superphysical structure and remember it as towering over and being stronger than the mind and the emotions and the physical form, then all the way through the chakras, the superphysical powers will percolate, and the impure thoughts will vanish, impure desires, and there will be peace in that part.
Good morning, and welcome each and every one of you to the Church of the Holy Quest this morning. I'd like to welcome all of you that are here with us in this beautiful sanctuary, and a welcome to all of you viewing at home or wherever you are, and a special welcome to those of you that are here for the first time. It's so nice to have you here. It's so wonderful to see familiar faces and come to these grounds, and I always feel like I'm coming home, and it's just so nice to be here with family and with everyone who is here in this moment. So today, this morning, our speaker will be Reverend Felice Reynolds, and she will be speaking on a look at the four elements of man and how these four elements of nature, fire, air, water, and earth, tie in and are present in each of us as human beings and throughout the planet Earth. So as we start our service, I would like to ask all of us to join together and stand, if you choose, to sing in the Lord's Prayer. Thank you. Oh, these words, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So let us take a few moments to get centered and take some deep breaths as we evoke the presence of God onto and into earth. And let's start with the watchwords from Quest Haven's founder, Flower A. Newhouse. Stretch out my soul, O God. So that I may receive thee in all your glory. As we stretch our soul out and fill ourselves with the Spirit of God, the creator of all life, we breathe in this divine spirit. We breathe in this element of air into each atom and cell within our own bodies. And through the Spirit of the living Christ, we breathe the Spirit of the Holy Comforter, the Spirit of grace and mercy. And we let the Spirit flow through our very being. This is the Christing that we open ourselves up to as we walk this earth on this soil and bring heaven down into earth through the cleansing of our open channels of being. We let the element of water flow through us and baptize us and nourish us and cleanse us so that we continue to be open channels for this Christing. And we bring in the element of fire and allow it to burn in our hearts and ignite our cells, every cell, with the living, loving light of Christ. We are thankful to be here in this sanctuary of Quest Haven in nature, and the sanctuary that is now opening up in our hearts to be receivers of the divine Christ presence. And we take this moment to attune to every living being and creature throughout our world who is now attuning in this very moment through every faith across the earth. In this glorious receiving and honoring of that which we all have in common within our hearts, the Christ. And we ask that we also attune to all the areas of earth that are currently darkened and where there is difficulty in opening our eyes and our hearts and our minds to receive this energy, this force, these elements of the Christing that are within each of us. And today, bless our speaker so that her words will carry this holy intention to bring this Christing energy into all of us and each of us in this moment throughout this day and as we go out into our lives so that we can share it out into the world. We ask these things in the deepest love and reverence and honor as well as surrender and humility. In the name of Christ, amen. And now our Quest Haven Voice Choir will sing The Prayer of St. Francis by Bradley Ellingbo.
Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, let us grant pardon. Where there is discord, unite our hearts.
Where there is doubt, may we find faith. When we despair, give hope. Where there is darkness, give us light. Where there is sadness, give joy. Lord, grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love.
For it's in giving that we receive in pardoning, that
We are pardoned, and in dying we are born to eternal life. Amen. Amen.
Well, I last spoke from this lectern at the end of June on the subject of the beauty of trees and God in nature after returning from a trip that was spent outdoors. And during that talk, I mentioned that one insight I was connecting with was the four elements that we find in nature: earth, water, air, and fire. You might remember this picture if you saw that talk. We have the campfire with the fire. The hose could represent the water. There also was rain coming down. Of course, I was sitting on the earth, and we had the air around us. Well, as it always seems to happen now, this brought into my consciousness different avenues in which to do this. In fact, that very weekend that I was speaking, there was a webinar that I had previously signed up for. And it was one of those things where I first received an email about it, and I thought, oh, I don't think I want to do that one. But then I got a second invitation, and something nudged me inside, and I decided to listen to their promotion, and then I went ahead and signed up for it. And it was entitled The Secrets of Anti-Aging for Your Brain, Your Body, and Your Future. And the two women who put this on were Deborah Poneman and Ronnie Newman. Well, they had a lot of wonderful information to impart on a variety of subjects related to health and wellness. And as with anything we are exposed to, it's up to each of us to determine what we want to take on to work on. And some of it we just have to let go because we don't want to be overwhelmed and try to do too much change at once. And some of it really just didn't resonate with me, so that was easy to let go of. And as Reverend Lucy Wold told us last week in her talk on the physical body, we don't want to be fanatical and obsess over one aspect of our health. And some of what they taught kind of bordered on that fanaticism to me. But I certainly came away with many nuggets of truth, much of which I'd already learned other times, but sometimes we just have to keep hearing it, or we hear it a little differently in order to apply it. And why I bring this up today is that woven through their topics was this thread of the 4 elements. One thing they stressed was the importance of hydration. That again we heard about last week in Lucy's talk. Water. There was quite a bit about the breath and proper breathing for our overall health, the air, and of course the food we eat, the outer care of our physical bodies ties us to the earth. And then we have fire, that element of heat that keeps us alive through our body temperature and allows us to heat our homes and our food. And also certain spices add fire to our food, which can be very beneficial for some people. And I found myself paying attention to these topics in a whole new way. Well, our founder, the Reverend Flower A. Newhouse, and others here at Quest Haven have spoken many times over the years about this subject of the elements. And in fact, at least 3 books of her teachings have a whole chapter or more on it. And today I'll be primarily sharing from the Angels of Nature and also the 7 Bodies Unveiled that Reverend Lucy used last week. Also, Wellsprings of the Holy Quest, if you have that one, has a chapter on it. And I highly recommend reading both of these books because they're just rich with information on the topic. Well, let us start with the element of earth. Oh, I guess I could have made those letters a little bigger for you guys. Anyway, this is tied closest with our physical body, which is the most dense and restrictive of our bodies. And earth, too, is something we can readily use our outer senses to experience. We can touch earth, hold it between our fingers. We can smell it, see it, hear it as we crunch on the hard surfaces. And we can even taste it when we happen to get dirt in our mouths. But of course, the food we eat also comes from the earth. And in preparing for the talk today, I quickly realized that we cannot talk about these elements without bringing in the invisible presences that make up the kingdoms under each of these elements, for they are very much a part of our experience, even though we are often unaware of them. And these beings exist on the etheric plane, which is the one just beyond our physical realm, and then on up to the higher planes. And my understanding is that these beings start out as what Flower called elementals, which are the spirits of the atoms. And in a talk Flower did in 1976 entitled The Influence of the Elements, Earth, Air, Fire, and Water, she said that they are the spirits within the minerals, the vegetables, the creatures, and man, and Superman. She described them as being sentient beings, which means they can feel, sense, react, and respond intuitionally and instinctively to the command of the hierarchies which they serve. They do not have free will, however. That's unique to the human line of development. And these elements start out as minute intelligences in each of the kingdoms. With the Earth Kingdom, we've all heard of gnomes, elves, fairies, but are you aware that there are even smaller beings, no larger than a thumbnail, who are the spirit essences of plants and minerals? They might exist below our physical Earth surface or above, and they work tirelessly to attend to their work. They don't understand why man does not do the same. Flower describes them as radiating joy and being filled with light. They have their own unique features which vary depending on where they live, and also what type of life form that they're working with. She said that the one quality they expect in humans is unselfishness. They are strongly repelled by selfishness. And so if we cultivate generosity in our beings, we become more attractive to these nature beings. And as these elementals grow in their own development, they evolve into higher life forms. Beyond these little elementals, there are Frockins, the elves and gnomes, and all the way up to the tree devas and the lofty beings known as the lords of the mountains. And so just becoming aware of these other beings' existences, we can try to tune into them. And thinking of them living on the etheric plane has helped me because this is where our energy body is. And of course, everything is energy, but because of the density of the physical plane, we tend not to think of it so much when we think of energy. But the etheric body's main function is to provide the energy that we need in our physical body to stay alive. We know that our physical body has organs, which are the vital centers of functioning within it. On the etheric level are the chakras, which are the little spinning wheels of light. I'm sure most of you are familiar with those. And Flower says there are 7 major chakras or power centers, and we know that there are many more throughout the body of the minor chakras. Well, one of the things that I started to pursue since that weekend webinar I mentioned is the study of Qigong. I'm just at the very beginner state, but there is much focus on those chakras or energy centers. And I find it fascinating to see the thread of truth that's woven through all these different settings. I'm experiencing new insights into this etheric level, which I've heard before, but I'm being able to really grasp it differently. And I'm finding there's a fine balance between thinking and feeling when we're trying to go beyond our physical senses. We need to try to visualize things, which kind of brings in the mind, but then we also want to just feel it. And then the hardest thing is to kind of get yourself then out of the way and be emptied so that God can fill us and we can really just sort of tune into it, I guess. Well, this led me to think about when we pray and meditate. For example, when we say a blessing over the food we're going to eat, instead of just using words asking for the food to be blessed, we can really think about the atoms making up the molecules which make up the substance that we're going to be taking in. See that really being charged with divine energy. We can really see it nourishing our bodies in ways we perhaps haven't before. And somebody sent me a prayer this week that had been written out, and they used the term sacred healing alchemy within our cells. I thought that was just a beautiful little phrase, the sacred healing alchemy within our cells. I guess I hadn't really thought of that alchemy that takes place, and yet Flower also uses that word. We can also send gratitude through the energy field for all the persons and the life forms that were involved in getting the food to us. And so when you do these creative ways, you can really tune into the energy that is all around us that affects our earth body. And it keeps giving us new ways to do this. Flower also told us that as we evolve, we receive tests by at least one of the different elements every day. She said that the earth tests are ones that involve our physical bodies and our outer world, such as our work, our homes, things of that nature. We are to make wise choices when it comes to what we put in our bodies, how we take care of them. And the more we awaken on this spiral path of development, we often find that our tastes do change, and things that perhaps we might have indulged in that weren't good for us, as we use that choice and make better choices, it becomes less of a temptation, which always helps to know that we won't keep being tested by it. And I've also started looking at that word testing lately, and instead I'm using the word opportunity. So I see that we are given daily opportunities to make good choices in what we do with our time, how we react to things, and how we care for our outer forms. And when we see ourselves being challenged by a particular thing over and over in this outer world, we can be sure it's an earth test for us. And then we can say, You will not slay me, because I recognize what you are and what you are to do to me in making me stronger, in making me sure of the way my soul has chosen. And one more thought from Flower before we leave the earth element. She said, our object lessons during the times of our more advanced unfoldment point directly toward our achievements of conscious control, the putting on of immortality through the regeneration and enlightenment of our interests and desires. Each day, those who stand at our place of unfoldment need to remind ourselves, I must prove that I, who use this body, am not its slave, but its director. I choose the way of immortalizing my physical body by adopting and cultivating the habits and decisions of refinement and of spiritual transformation. Well, moving now to the water realm. 3/4 of the Earth's surface is made up of water, and it's also the primary component within our cells, cells in our bodies. And this element is closely tied with our emotions as well. And we use water as a purifying agent to clean our bodies. In addition to being a necessary ingredient in our diet. And we use the water in our showers to clean our bodies, and not just physically. When we are being bathed with water, our emotions and energies that make up our aura are also cleansed and purified in the process. And as Deborah mentioned in her prayer, we use water to baptize things because it's so highly magnetic. Our emotions are also highly magnetic. And from Seven Bodies Unveiled, we read that whenever we deal with water, as in bathing, drinking, swimming, or observing, remember, here is a most sensitive element whose citizenry requires from man his conquest of destructive emotions. She said that as you drink water, hold aloft your glass prayerfully, saying, may this water, sensitively subjected as it always is to the intake of spiritual and alchemical influences, release through me as it enters me all stains, all impurities, and all clinging things of my conscious as well as my unconscious habits. And whenever we look upon water or drink it, we need to realize that it's through its vital charging, its highly magnetic cleansing properties, we too may know releasement, refreshment, purification, and especially delight. Well, since water is a large part of this world, there are the most numerous superphysical beings that belong to this kingdom as well. And starting with the tiny oceanids, which are about as big as a drop of ocean, all the way up to the sea lords and the lofty Tija or angel princes. And of these 4 realms, water beings are the most emotional and changeable. In fact, they're very dynamic, colorful, and excitable in temperament. So think of the fast-moving streams and rivers that go over waterfalls or rapids, and how exciting that would be for a water being. And something that surprised me was that she said, until angelhood dawns for these water beings, the lives of them are characterized by much friction, excitability, and instability. And indeed, of all the realms, the water world has the strongest rivalry between rivers, lakes, and even between the great oceans. And she said this is due in part to the link between water and emotions. Well, if we think about big bodies of water, they do work on our emotions. And when you picture a large body of water such as this lake that's normally peaceful and calm, what do you feel? we start to relax, don't we? We feel that peace and calm. And this is what the water beings are imparting to us. The beings that dwell in the rivers and streams, they're much more active and stimulating, and they bring up those energies within us. And so we often feel invigorated or energized when we're near those waters. And when I was up in Northern California, I was able to take a trip down a section of the Klamath River in a raft, and the stretch that we were doing was pretty peaceful, so much of the time it was very calm. But there we did hit a few places where there were rocks, and you started to kind of feel like you're riding the rapids, and it does get your heart beating faster and feel exhilarating. But I will never forget when my husband and I took our young children to see the Niagara Falls. And if you've ever been there, you know what I mean. It's just hard to put into words. You go right up to the falls, and you have that water just splashing, and thrill is the only word I can come up with. You just feel so thrilling. And now being aware of all the nature beings and the cleansing that's taking place, I can see why you feel that way when you're there. Well, we know in the Bible that Jesus was able to command the water to be still enough for him to walk on it in the middle of the storm. And these beings do respond to somebody who has self-control. Of course, we're not at that level yet, but Flower did caution people who weren't in good control of their emotions or their actions to kind of stay away from bodies of water until they were in better control, because you don't want to get that stirred up even more. And another interesting statement I heard Flower say was that where rain does not come as often as it should, there is some reluctance on the part of the younger intelligences, never the advanced ones, to come close. And she said, I'm still working on that to find out what it is, because I think all over Earth we should have an even flow of rain when it is necessary. I think it's a good thing to try when in nature and when we need rain desperately, like we do here now, to remind the elementals of water that this is important. And I know we often will pray for rain here, but I don't know that we often think to direct it to the little elementals. Well, we've kind of alluded to this already, but when we have tests in this area, it's with our emotions or emotional body, and that would become the water tests. And sometimes we see what we think of as water tests out in the world with the flooding that's going on in parts of our country now, and when the big hurricanes come. And we've been told that this is when there's a buildup of negative emotions that needs to be cleared, and I'll get onto that in a minute. But we also will sometimes dream about water, and that this could be a way of our bringing things up from our subconscious that we need to deal with around our emotions. Well, then moving on to the element of air. We think of our physical lungs and the work they do to bring air into our body and filter out the oxygen that we need to bring it into our tissues, and then other things that might be present that we want. We can choose to be conscious of our physical breath, but now picture that going on all levels of our being. When we take a breath in, think of what is happening physically. You feel the air coming in. And then when we exhale, we breathe out all that we don't need or want in our system. And if you're a singer, or if you study martial arts or some of the Eastern energy teachings, you'll know the importance of that diaphragmatic breathing and really using our diaphragm muscle rather than just breathing from our chest. And so let us think now what is happening on the etheric level. And this is where studying something like Qigong is very helpful, because the focus there is breathing in new life force, energy, and we can relate that to the etheric body. So then go up a step and think of the emotional body, the astral body. When we're feeling upset, angry, sad, or anxious, If we take slow, deep breaths, we feel a calming within. And aren't we told to slow down and take some deep breaths when we're starting to lose control or getting angry? And this is why, because when you do it intentionally, there's that immediate shift from this need to do something or react in some way, but you can just get relaxed and return to that point of centeredness and balance. And then if we go up another level higher to the mental plane, we can think of our thinking, our mentality being linked to the breath. And when we're in that state of deep breathing, our thoughts are often inspired and uplifted. We're more open to receive insights. And then on the soul plane, we experience it through direct perception, through intuition. And then going up another level to the Adonai, it becomes the throne of the all-knowing wisdom. So this element, air, more than the others, is linked with consciousness, awareness. And in the 7 bodies unveiled, we read, "Into our lungs pour not only the ingredients which oxidize, purify, and accelerate our physical vehicles, but which simultaneously inbreathe into our higher bodies the movements of divine wisdom, divine will, and divine causation." In fact, we are told that the loftiest beings that work in this kingdom are under the charge of the third aspect of the Holy Trinity, the Holy Spirit. And these are the ones who determine the pathways of growth leading to enlightenment. The other nature beings and angels that serve in this kingdom are also very sensitive to humans and the noise and air pollution that we generate, not just outwardly. Of course, loud, discordant sounds and the physical contaminants in the air are offensive to them. But thinking again of our sevenfold beings, our energies, emotions, and thoughts that are not of the highest, that we are capable of bringing forth, also repel these air beings. And again, Flower cautioned people who are flying to be very aware of their thoughts in particular and to keep them as pure as possible when in the air so that we will attract these beings in a positive way should we need their assistance. That was a good reminder for any of us that are going to be traveling soon in the air. Well, like the water kingdom, when we think of the air kingdom, there's something very purifying about it. Of course, we know that there can be destruction when powerful windstorms go through an area, but standing on a bluff overlooking the ocean, or here at Questhaven on a hill when the winds are blowing, it feels invigorating. And I've often used the expression, I just feel like I've been swept clean. And then we can always think about John Muir and how he loved to go to the top of a tree during a storm and just feel that air blowing back and forth. And I think I particularly have an affinity with this element. And I used to wonder if I maybe started out as a little elemental in the air kingdom because I always loved that wind. Well, the smallest ones of this kingdom are called builders, and then they go up to the zephyrs, all the way up to the wind sylphs and greater angels. And again, I strongly recommend looking at Angels of Nature, which also has some pictures of them and talks about them in more detail. And the qualities that are most important to the air beings that we can embody are respect, reverence, and humility. Again, they do not have free will, and they don't understand why man would not choose to be constant, to have better self-control, and to respect the divine plan. But our free will trips us up sometimes. And any test that we have related to the air kingdom would be with our mind, our mental body, our thoughts. And I also just wanted to reiterate that when we do see natural disasters that take place in whatever forms, whether it's earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, our understanding here at Questhaven is that it's not because of the nature beings or the angels working in that kingdom, but rather it's due to that accumulation of negative thoughts, feelings, energies that just build up from the human line. And they have to be transmuted somehow and gotten rid of. And that often that's what generates these natural disasters. And she said what we can do individually to help with this is that we can really work on being those purer vessels and really be aligned with the divine. And then, as I mentioned before, we can attract the help from the angelic presences when we are in a situation, perhaps of one of these disasters, and we can call upon their help, and they're much more likely to respond to us. Oops. Oh, yeah. And this brings us to the fire kingdom. Of course, we know how fire is expressed in our body as temperature, and that when we are invaded with a foreign toxic agent like bacteria or virus in a significant way, that we often run fevers or a substantially higher temperature in that effort of our body to burn up the invaders. And then many cultures teach about different foods or spices that to eat or either to add the fire to our bodies or to cool them internally, depending on your body type and temperament. But beyond the physical body, we know that we have the spark of God in our highest body, what we call the monad. And we can then think of that fire, that spark, rain down light through all of our lower vehicles. We can think of light then as another aspect of the fire that we have within us. And we feel this element in our causal or soul bodies as wisdom, as with the air. The divine inspiration, you can think of that like the light causing that spark of divine inspiration within our soul. Our mental bodies, we see that as intelligence when it comes through and helps us to articulate whatever inspirations are coming at a higher level. Our emotional bodies, we see it as that empathy and compassion for one another. And then, of course, the fire goes into our etheric body, the light, and bringing us that energy that we need. And I love this element because it is the most pure and most in line with God. And my understanding is that it is linked to the upper triad of bodies, the soul, Adonai, and monad. And it truly is the element of initiation. Our lives originated in the divine, fiery substance of the one called God. I really loved that thought. And with each overcoming, each major step forward on our path to return to God, we experience that fire of illumination that burns up the dross of what we're working on and inspires us forward. The nature beings and angels that belong to this kingdom are the most advanced and the least understood. The fire beings below the rank of angelhood, so all the little nature beings, have very little interest or involvement with humans. So I'm not going to mention those today. However, there are some who work with us in that process of illumination, some of the higher angels. And two of them to talk about are the Amphrey and the Furial angels. And the one purpose of the Amphrey angels is to ignite and sustain the fires of spirituality wherever they see persons who are seeking, who are ready for their inspiration and help. And these fire beings require of us integrity, earnestness, enthusiasm, and holy desire. The Amphrey are responsible for the perfecting of human relationships. Their very essence is love. And Flower and other teachers have revealed to us that love, beauty, reverence, and courage are all in essence flame-like. And I really like that thought of picturing the flame being around those qualities of love and beauty, reverence, and courage. And when these qualities energize the whole being, relationships, tasks, plans, and worship come together in an inner fire which energizes and purifies and transforms us at the deepest level. And when that human being experiences initiation, the Amphrey angels that have been working with that person makes a contact with the next highest angelic order, which is the Furial. And these are even more advanced, and they only reside on the soul plane or the causal level. And when an individual's whole being yearns for purity, dependability, and fidelity to light, they're ready to work with this great being. And so working on that soul level, they manipulate electrical properties to further the unfoldment of these men and women. Thus, whereas an amphory concentrates on extinguishing the dross in a human charge by consuming it in soul fires lit from within, a Furial's specific duty is to wield an electric baptism of causal energies that penetrates the higher bodies of the candidate for the purpose of initiation and its coincident illumination. And I also read that the Furial render a very practical service in addition to this. They are the angels to whom we can address prayers for fire protection. And she said we should mention them by name during fire-endangered seasons or situations. Not only are these angels of sufficient advancement to intervene effectively, but they also have much of caring and want to work with the humans, as well as the entire planet's evolution. So that's another really good thing to remember, particularly in this time of year here. And so when we encounter opportunities that try us, that push us, that require us to face something within us that needs to be overcome and moved past, we often feel like a part of us is being burned out. And we know that we're having a fire test. But it is in these ways that we advance and have all of the minor initiations that we have that lead us then to the major ones, which we need in order to get to that place of mastery or wholeness. So while it's hard in the moment, if we can just try to remember the path that we are on and what will be our reward when we get to the other side of that challenge, then we can get through it. And as I said in the opening, I spoke here 6 weeks ago, having just returned from a trip up to Northern California. And I was visiting my son, who works for the Forest Service in Happy Camp, which is in the Siskiyou County. And you may have seen it on the news, but a week ago Friday, a fire started out, most likely from a power line, and overnight it exploded due to the wind and weather conditions. And it quickly became the biggest fire in California this year. And there are other smaller fires also that are burning in the area where he's at. And it's just a little bit surreal for me to think of places that I drove through recently that are now completely burned. And when we hear of the devastation that fires cause, it's hard to appreciate that purifying aspect as well. But sometimes good does come from the ashes. And sometimes we just have to wait and see what that's going to be. I was recently reminded that when the fire came through Questhaven in 1996, that the house that Flower had lived in for most of her time here at Questhaven was burned in its wake, as well as 3 other buildings. And miraculously, our sanctuary here was not touched. But in its place, we were able to build our present academy building, which has been a wonderful addition to our ministry campus here. I think it was something that was wanted, but that step of tearing down Flower's house to build it was, and maybe they didn't even see it being in that location at the time, but it wasn't an easy step for people to take here at that time. But we may have needed some divine intervention to make sure that it happened. Well, and so as we think of these 4 elements and the way that they play such a big role in our life on all levels of being, let us open ourselves to be inspired in new ways of living that allow us to be more balanced and able to meet the opportunities that come our way to help us to grow. As our consciousness, our awareness expands, we are able to take on more and more. And for me, I recently noticed my prayer work has been deepening. I find myself connecting to the divine more and more frequently throughout the day, blessing my water, blessing my food, blessing my dog's food. These are things that I hadn't really made a good practice of. And being aware of the elementals within all the things and asking them to bring into alignment all the things that we ingest. It's just been an interesting journey, and I know that it's going to continue. And I wanted to close today with us tuning in to some of these elements. As we did a little bit before with Deborah, we're going to be thinking of the air kingdom with our breath. And we know the importance of taking those deep cleansing breaths throughout the day. And I'm sure you've all done mantras or said, something positive to yourself as you were doing those breathing. We can say things like, I breathe in energy, or I breathe in peace, or confidence, or whatever it is that we need. And then as we breathe out, we can say, I expel negativity in all forms, which could include ill health or negative thoughts, emotions, or you can use whatever words resonate with you. And you want to use your diaphragm and really feel it going in and out. And you can even put your hand on your belly to see if it's moving. Or the other thing that we've done here, I know, is putting one hand on the belly and one hand over your heart, where your heart chakra is, so that it draws your attention to this energy portal, which is where the God Spirit indwelling resides. And so while we're doing this, we'll be listening to the song by Susan Lincoln and Craig Tungate entitled Breathe Love, which was inspired by Hildegard of Bingen. And the words themselves will give you a focus, but you can also add your own as you want to around it. And so as the music begins, I invite you to close your eyes and slowly start breathing in and out, becoming aware of what is taking place on all levels of your being.
Breathe light.
Thank you, Felice, so much for that beautiful meditation and for your talk today. It really opened up so many ways that we can know God through our own elements that are within us and in nature. And I am reminded how grateful I am to be part of this Quest Haven retreat in this academy and all its lessons, and how much there is for us to learn about all the ways that we can come closer to God that I know at least I take for granted. So thank you for that reminder of just breathing and finding our way in. So there is so much to be thankful for today and every day, and we want to extend a thank you to all the servers that came out yesterday to help care for these Christ-consecrated grounds here at Quest Haven. And thank you to all of you that put in your time and effort and offerings to help make this place available to so many people in service of Christ. There are so many ways for us to give spiritually, personally, mentally, emotionally, and financially. And want to thank you to all of those of you who give in so many different ways or ways that are important to you. And for those of you online, there's a little button you can click to give something if you are so called for today. And then those of you in here on your way out, there's a special receptacle where you can give us a donation to just keep this love and spirit and light going. So we have some announcements. Next Saturday, August 13th, is our Master's Silent Retreat, and we'll gather at 9 a.m. in Chapelito for the opening and hold silence until noon on that day. And then next Sunday, August 14th, Reverend Julie Hilt will be here to speak on the reality of Masters. And then Saturday, August 20th at 8 a.m., we have our Holy Quest Nature Walk, led by Richard Bolt, Dr. Rebecca Wright-Nixon, and Jonathan Snap Cook. So hope that you'll be here to join us for that. A reminder today that after the service at 12:45, there will be bell practice. So that's something that we're looking forward to. If any of you have not heard of the Quest Haven Bell Choir, it's something to experience if you want to tap into your soul. And please join us for fellowship and refreshments at the Friendship House following today's service. And now Reverend Felice Reynolds will give us our closing prayer and benediction.
O Holy One, who dwells here in this sanctuary, dwells within each one of us and throughout the whole universe. We ask that we walk with you through our week ahead, that we will find new and deepening ways to keep that connection with the divine, with our Lord Christ. And it is with deepest gratitude we do ask this. Amen. Go forth with the power of the earth, the inspiration of the air, the purity of water, and the divine fire that comes to us from on high. Amen.
I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God is closest, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of His voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that He gave to me within my heart is ringing, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God is closest, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own, and the joy